All right. Let's move this a little closer. Okay, can you hear me up there? All right, I'm going to try to talk loud. And if you guys have a question, just raise your hand. Don't be afraid because you're way up there. And I've said that I'll answer any question that you ask, except for something that's like personal between my wife and I. I promise I won't have you fill out a form and then my campaign staff will go in the back and read them and make sure that the easy questions are for me. We won't do that. Thank you for being here. Thank you for just being interested enough to come out. It's a beautiful place to be. It's going to be a good night. And I do hope to just have a conversation here. I'll give you a little bit of background of myself. Some of you may know, some of you may not, but I grew up in southern Nevada. I grew up on a ranch in southern Nevada. My dad runs about 600 head of cattle, and it's an absolute desert down there. It's a lot different than up here, even though people say that this area is the desert. But to us, this is like my dad came up and to my house. He's done it several times, and he looks on the hills and he's like, man, if I had these hills, I could run 10,000 head of cattle. And because there's so much grass. And when we have a drought down there, like everybody's having a drought around, we don't even know it's a drought. It's just normal for us. And my family in the Bunkerville, Mesquite, Nevada area, they came in there and settled that area in 1877. That was 5 generations ago for me, and it puts us about 145, 46 years. And the very first thing they did is they began to run their cattle up on the hills, but they couldn't go very far because there wasn't hardly any water. And so they began to see that there were like little wet spots on the ground. And if they would dig deep down in there, they could find a spring and they would capture that water and pipe it out. And then now today, my father, he's 75 years old, he's actually diverted that water along with my grandfather and great-grandfather and so forth. He's diverted that water to about 30 miles, covers about a 30-mile span in the desert. And now the cattle can eat the grass and the shrub and the cactus and whatever else is available to them, and they don't have to go so far for water. So we're able to run more cattle, but there's something else that happens too, because now there's a lot more wildlife because they're drinking the same water, right? So we got lots of rabbits, quail, pheasant, of course coyotes, deer, mountain lions, and also people get to enjoy it more because they get to go out where there's an area where there's water and where there's wildlife. They can hunt, they can camp. There's not a whole lot of fishing, though, I'll tell you that, because they're just these water troughs literally out in the middle of the desert. And in some places it's really beautiful, in other places it's pretty dry. And that's what my family has been doing for the last 5 generations. And my dad, he likes to say that that's what he enjoys doing. He says that I'm providing a commodity for the American people, and that commodity is red meat. And that's what he does, and that's who he is. It's in his blood. He wants to produce. He's a producer. And for whatever reason, my family chose to go in the middle of the desert and do it. And it's a hard living, and it doesn't produce enough money really for only about 2 families. So when I was 15 years old my father came to me and he says, son, this ranch isn't big enough for the both of us. And he wasn't meaning that so much, although we did knock heads several times. But he wasn't meaning that as, I don't want you around here. He was simply telling me, giving me forewarning that there's just not enough living here for more than a couple families. And so you're probably, because I was in the middle of all my brothers and sisters, he's telling me I'm going to have to go out and make a living some other way, provide for my family some other way. And so, but about as soon as I could, I went to a little college in Southern Utah University, and I started a fleet maintenance business where I managed to maintain commercial trucks. And I was pretty naive. I was 21 years old. I was pretty naive to business, but I knew that I was going to have a business, and I actually was going into school for business management. And then my business ended up taking over. And so I left college and I went straight in full-time into business. And I ended up building one of the largest private fleet maintenance companies in Arizona. And I've hired hundreds of people, dealt with millions and millions of dollars a year, and it was a very complicated, lots of moving parts business, because I had to not only manage the fleets and all their preventive maintenance and so forth, but then we had to also repair them. And we went everything from, lift gates to tires to brakes to rebuilding engines to transmissions, and also maintaining and all the electronics and emissions that are put on us. And we did that, and we did it very successful. And then throughout the whole time of me in business, I was always looking for, of course, better ways to do it, better services for our customers, be more efficient, also so that I could provide a better working environment for my technicians and employees. That's something I was always looking for. And part of that, I was looking for a software that would allow me to manage my business better. And I could never find what I needed. I always, I used softwares for finance. I used softwares for some of the tracking of the maintenance, but I could never find anything that put it together. And so that was because it wasn't out there. So what do we do in America when we don't have what we need? Innovate. We build it, right? I always say the wonderful thing about being in the United States of America is if you can't find a job, you just make one. And that is the beautiful thing about being here. And so I decided that I was going to make the software that I needed. And I put together my team, and I hired a programmer, I hired a project manager, and we began to build a software. And it was perfect scenario, because I was able to take my ideas that I had and that we had already implemented in our shop and proven that they worked, right? But we were doing it with a mixture of softwares, paper, all kinds of different ways we were doing it. And so we took these ideas and we began to implement them and to code them. And then we were able to test them on my customers, because I would go communicate with them, say, we're building this software. Are you willing to be a lab rat? Are you willing to let us test? And they'd be like, yeah, And then I was able to test it on my vendors, and I was able to test it with my technicians and my office staff, and we were able to fine tune it. And it took us about 3.5 years to build this software. And then it started working so well for us that we decided, well, why don't we sell this to other shops? Because we can influence the entire industry, right? We can influence and get everybody doing the same thing that we're doing, and everybody will benefit, because there's really not a limit to the work. There's a lot of work. It's more like a challenge getting it done, right? So why don't we help everybody out? Plus, we'll make money doing it. So we began to sell this to other shops, and now that software is one of the leading fleet maintenance shop management softwares in North America. And so that's a little bit about my business background, who I am, a little bit about my history of how I grew up. And I have to admit, I grew up with a lot of freedom. I was able to get on a horse or get on a four-wheeler. I could drive for miles and miles, hundreds of miles. Even I could go for days and never ever have a limit to where I would travel when it come to horseback and so forth. And just so you know, if you looking at a map and you're looking at Nevada has a big point, right? It goes down, and then it has a little jog, and then another little jog there, and then it hits Arizona, and then comes up in Utah. Well, Lake Mead is right there, and there's a mountain range right on the Arizona border, and then you have the Colorado River. Well, my family ranches in that little pocket, And so there's no way for anybody to get in there from the bottom, because you got the Grand Canyon and you got Lake Mead, and then you got this massive mountain range, and it would be the extension of what they call the Arizona Strip. And so it literally was like a very free place for us to grow up, and we were constantly out there. It was our life. We spent, days and days, and I can't tell you how many, it would equate to probably years of times on a horse or out on the range. And it was part of our life, and I really enjoyed that life. In fact, when I got older, and of course I left the ranch, even though I started my own business and I have a family, I got married, I always longed to go back to the ranch. I always wanted to live there and do those things. It was just something that was in me. I also let you know that I'm a family man. I have a wife, Lisa, and I have 6 children. My oldest is 19. She just got married, and they're now in, should I say that here? They're in Moscow. And I know I hesitate saying that here. But anyway, that's where they're at, and anyway, they're doing well. And my youngest is 6 years old, and so I'm right in the middle of it. I'm right in the middle of raising children, and ultimately, that's what I enjoy doing. I enjoy teaching my children, being with them, and trying to do the best I can, being a father, being an example of working and producing, and so that's my background. That's who I am. And I actually intend on here today just mostly having a conversation. I wanted you to know a little bit who I am, to give some background. Hey! Give some background here. And take some cheers. That guy's my fan, I'm sure. My number one. And anyway, speaking of that, the media has done a fun job. They like to use my name and say all kinds of things. And actually what I found, it's actually been a really good advantage to me. Because when I'm able to meet people and they're like, wait a minute, that's not what the media said. He's not like that. And then they realize that they were lied to. And then they become really quite either loyal to me as far as like ideas and working, or at least they go and tell other people that something's wrong there. It's not the same person that they're talking about. So I'm going to open this up to questions because I want to have a conversation here. And I'm willing to answer any question. It could be any question you want. I'll answer it. And so let's just talk and open this up. I might have to rephrase your question so that everybody can hear it, and I'll do the best I can. If I rephrase it and it's not accurate, then just tell me, and I'll try to do it again, or I'll have you come up and say it. So first question right here.
Sure. I have a lot of questions for you, but I'll
Okay, well, we could do more than one.
So the media has lied to us a lot, and I really respect all this talk about your business, and I respect that you're an innovator, and I've definitely heard a lot more about your dad than you, and no offense.
No, not at all. My dad's famous.
But you talked a lot about the innovation. I really appreciate that. But I guess my big question is, why are you running? Like, what sort of policies are you trying to enact? Are you the most conservative candidate? Are you upset with Brad Little? What is the main reason you were in the race?
Okay, so he's asked what's the main reason for me in the race? What am I doing here? And I will say that in 2020, I didn't really appreciate what happened to us there. I believe that there was a terrible usurpation of power, to the point where we have the health district thinking they have authority to tell us we have to stay in our homes. Well, and I understand through experiences of what happened to my family and what, and basically kind of this history of the federal government trying to destroy the ranching industry and other industries, and my family being involved in that. I clearly understood that what needed to happen when someone says that you're that when someone does not have authority and then they say you can't do something, that it's very important that you do just the opposite. And so I rallied people to do that, and organized a organization called People's Rights, and got about 60,000 people in it. We began to push back and really make a difference in Idaho and in other states. And then the legislature, we worked with the legislature, or we tried to work with the legislature, because the Idaho law, and I am getting to your question, I will answer your question, I just want to give some background. Because the Idaho law says that the Governor Little, or a governor in Idaho, can put the state, put the executive branch of government in executive order for 30 days. And then it says that if it's an extreme situation, he can extend that order for another 30 days. But after that, he's supposed to turn that power over to the legislature. And then it says in the law that if the legislature, or if the governor doesn't end the order within the 60 days, then on the 90th day, the legislature shall, it says, convene, and they can have a joint resolution and end the order. And so we began to inform the legislature that this is the mechanism to end the order, and that the governor doesn't have authority to just put the people of Idaho, the state of Idaho, under executive emergency orders indefinitely. That's called a dictatorship, not a constitutional republic, right? So, and the legislature said, well, we have to get permission from the governor before we can assemble. Now, how much sense does that make, right? You have a law that says that in order to end an executive order, the legislature is to assemble on the 90th day, shall assemble on the 90th day, and then the legislature says that they can't assemble without permission from the governor, whose order they're trying to end. And so that was their excuse. And then they patted us on the back and they said, don't worry, we're going to take care of this in the 2021 legislative session. We're going to end the order. We're going to take care of it all. We're going to make sure that it doesn't happen again to the people of Idaho. And we didn't like that, because we're talking about 9 months now. You know, we have to look forward to emergency order and all the things that are happening for 9 months. And ultimately, the legislature got together and they actually started to, looks like they were going to end the order. They were starting the process. And then they quit. All of a sudden they stopped. And so we began to inquire, why did you stop? Why isn't this in the committee? Why isn't this becoming a bill? And you know what we were told? Because the governor asked them not to pass the bill, because Idaho wouldn't get the federal funds that they would get otherwise, and so they stopped the bill. So anyhow, this was the scenario that brought us into 2021. So myself and many others are very concerned about what's happening, and we know that people are going to start announcing to be governor. And ultimately, I stepped back and just said, okay, hopefully someone comes up that's going to understand the laws, that's going to understand the principles of liberty. They're going to be true conservatives, right? And they're going to have the strength enough not to compromise or not to crash when the good old boys club comes down upon them. And so first I saw Ed Humphrey, he announced first, and I thought, you know, I think he's a really nice guy. I've talked to him. I actually have some respect for the guy, but he has no idea what's going to come at him if he was to be governor. And he does not have the experience to hold up to what pressures are going to come against him. And then there were several others that announced. I think about 47 others have announced since then. That's a joke, by the way. But there are several others. And then Janice McGeehan comes around and she announces. And again, I look, let me look, I'm like, okay, and she seems conservative. But all the way through 2020 and into 2021, we were begging her, asking her to use her position to unite the legislature and to protect the people of Idaho against what is happening. And she was just silent. And so I kept looking and kept looking, and ultimately, no one came to the running of governor, if you will, that I felt had enough name recognition and enough strength to stand up to what is going to come to Idaho and what already is coming. And if we're right now in a situation where Idaho is doing the exact same thing and going the exact same direction as Oregon did 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, Washington, California, Nevada, New Mexico, Colorado, Utah's doing it now too. They're getting to about, and every one of those states were Republican before they turned Democrat, liberal, every one of them. And they all did the same thing. And they were all controlled, got controlled by the good old boys club. And then they went down that same path. And so ultimately, that among many other things motivated me to throw my ring in the hat and run for governor. So, all right, another question. Did I answer your question?
You answered two of them, yeah.
Okay, good. Awesome, right here.
Yeah, so what is your plan for the Afghan refugee resettlement that's going on right now, or just refugee resettlement in general, honestly? There's been several of them over the years. I know that other people in power have been kind of just allowing it to happen, and I think that there's a lot of danger associated with that, so kind of something that concerns me.
Okay, so the Afghan resettlement here in Idaho and others, but particularly here in Idaho. Well, first of all, we have to understand a couple things. The federal or the state of Idaho signed a memorandum of understanding, a contract, and received a bunch of federal money to take in immigrants when the federal government tells them to. And this top-down control with money is a huge problem. It's a huge problem. It's what's happening to our schools, it's happening to our state, happening to our health districts, our sheriff departments, our police departments. They're all getting money from the federal government, and the federal government does not give any money without strings attached. And so the federal government has it all laid out where we'll give you this million or this 10 million or this 100 million if you will sign and agree to this agreement. And one of those agreements was that the state of Idaho would take in immigrants when they tell them to. And they have to do it because now they're contractually obligated to, because they just received millions and millions of dollars, right? And it may not have happened at the time, so the legislature or the governor or whatever agency is handling it, they think no big deal, we're just going to get all this money, right? Well, sooner or later, they have to pay the piper. And now we're paying the piper. So now the question was, well, what are we going to do about it? Well, the answer to me is the same in many ways, because we have to stop this flow of federal funds from coming into the state. We have to stop it. We have to stop these agencies. We're talking about, we've got school districts signing contracts with the federal government for money. And in those contracts, they're agreeing to curriculums like critical race theory. They're agreeing to these things. And that is, we're losing our liberties simply because those in charge at the time are selling their souls to the federal government. And our founders talked about this. They made it very clear that if the federal government was to take the resources and the funds of the people into central government and then trickle it down, that it would put the states and the people in what they called undue obedience. And so I see this same issue with the immigrants coming in as it's the same problem we're having in many, many different areas. Education, welfare, of course, immigration, even in our policing forces. I've actually read personally a memorandum of understanding where a policing agency in Idaho agreed to what they call a use of force. I can't remember the actual term, use of force agreement. And it was an agreement of escalation of force rather than de-escalation of force. It was the way that they were trained and agreed to use of force. And these are the type of things that the federal government is doing all over. And I do plan on fighting that battle. I plan on making it so that people can't sign contracts, agencies, school boards, they can't sign contracts with the federal government. It's absolutely unconstitutional and it's inappropriate, to be honest with you. And so there's my long answer. I do want to add, since we're on immigration, I want to point out a few things, because this is not about immigrations coming into Idaho, but, well, in a direct sense. But I believe that we can categorize immigration into three different groups. And there's those that want to come here for a handout, right? And it doesn't matter if they're coming to Idaho or if they're coming from another country. It doesn't matter if they're coming from Oregon or Washington or California. This all applies. Some are coming here for a handout. Some are coming here for criminal opportunity. And others are coming here because they want freedom and opportunity and actual opportunity that they're going to work for. And we have to be wise at identifying the difference. And how do you solve the problem of immigrants coming in here, whether it's from another state or from another country, coming in here for welfare, for a handout? How do you stop that? How do you solve that problem? Yeah, you stop giving them welfare, right? They're going to keep coming. And what's wrong with Idaho saying no, being different? Idaho needs to be different. You know, don't come to Idaho for a handout. Did you hear that? Don't come to Idaho for a handout. If you want a handout, go to Washington, go to Oregon. Don't come to Idaho. And imagine what that will do for our economy. Imagine what that will do for our future. Now, second, there's those that come for criminal opportunity. Well, if we would get our criminal justice system functioning the way it was supposed to, the way it used to, where it truly punished crime and not used as a political weapon, if we were to do that, then guess what? All across the country and all around the world, don't go to Idaho if you're a criminal. Don't go to Idaho if you're a criminal. Go to Oregon, right? Go to Oregon. Go to Portland. I mean, you can steal in Portland. What do they say? I think it's $900 now. You can go into any business, and if you take something, and as long as it's under $900, the police won't even respond. They won't prosecute. Well, what message does that send? What does that send to every criminal? Come to Portland, right? So now Portland is literally a place where you, especially if it gets dark, you're taking your life into your hands just going downtown and walking around. And at one time, I mean, I flew into Portland, it's got to be 25 years ago. Portland was one of the most clean, beautiful cities I've ever seen. I was so impressed. And now it's a cesspool of violence, murder, which is violence, of course. I just didn't want to, replicate myself and not identify that murder is violence, right? And theft, and it's just, and then you got handouts, and you've got the homeless everywhere, and it literally has become a pretty terrible, dirty place. So, and then of course, third, we want people here that want to come here and work, that want to produce, that want to be good neighbors. And so make sure that we understand the difference between the three different types of immigrants. We want those that want to come here, that are willing to work for their living, that are willing to produce, that are good neighbors, that want to assimilate into our culture. We want those people here. And in fact, I would bet that if we looked at our genealogy, that probably everyone here, and exception maybe one or two, that everyone here has a forefather or mother that immigrated into the United States probably within just a few generations. I know I certainly do. And they came here. My forefathers, my foremothers. I guess I got to be appropriate here when I talk, because I'm at the university. They came for opportunity. They didn't come for a handout. They came to the United States because the United States gave them freedom and gave them opportunity and gave them a way that they can actually own their own property, own their own life, that they could actually be free. And so I know that that's why my grandfather and grandmothers came to this country, and I'm sure it's the same with yours. All right, question right here.
If there are all these candidates running to be little, doesn't that split the vote so that he'll probably win? And secondly, with all due respect, I have a lot of respect for everything you stand for everything you've done, but obviously you've been blackballed by the media, so how do you think you have a chance of winning?
Good question. So she says, with all the different candidates, splitting the vote would give little the advantage. And then with the media attacking and so forth, I'm going to say, how the hell am I going to win, right? Well, first of all, have you seen the polls?
Which one?
There's several of them, right? There's several of them. And it depends, polls are a snapshot in time. And you've got some that are asking certain specific questions in certain specific areas, so you have to be careful. But there is no question that I'm a leading candidate in this race. There is no question, okay? So know that I'm not some fringe candidate that is just here trying to get your attention. We do have a strong chance of winning the Republican nomination, and we plan on doing that. You want to join us? I'll give you an example. I have been all over the state about a time and a half, and I've met with groups of hundreds of people at a time. Most of them are probably 60, 70, 80, but I've had several groups that are, in a couple hundred and so forth. And I have asked the larger groups, I'll ask them, okay, who here, and it might be a little different, I'm going to ask this group the same thing, but who here is subscribed, because we're at a university, we're in the heart of Boise, right? Now it is a Republican meeting, so that probably makes a little difference. But who here is subscribed to the Idaho Statesman? Raise your hand. What? We're in the middle of Boise at the Boise State University, and there's not one person here?
I read
Now,
it if I need a laugh.
yeah. So who would like to give a shot out of all the places I've asked this question, which has been many now? Who would like to take a shot at how many people altogether in those groups have I found been subscribed to the Idaho Statesman? So she says 2. Anybody else want to take a shot? I got $10 in my pocket. Can we get it right? So how many? 10 you said?
0.
Anybody else? Oh, you cheated. You've heard me. 0. Not one person in the thousands of people that I've talked to, and I've been very busy going around talking, not one person has subscribed to the Idaho Statesman. So you know what I say? The hell with them. The 12 and a half people that are subscribed to the Idaho Statesman are never going to vote for me anyway. And so I'm gonna outwork them. We have a formula that works. I'm a software guy. We were building a software. We're using it right now to communicate with millions of people. Well, millions is an exaggeration, but over 1 million people in Idaho. And we are going to beat the rhinos at their own game. And so that's what we will do. We'll keep doing what we're doing because we have a formula. we know that if I can get in front of people, talk to people, that they change their mind. And so now it's a horse race to May 22nd to get in front of as many people as I can, either through media or personally or otherwise. And that's why I ask for people's help. If you truly believe that I will be a good governor and that I will protect the rights of the people, that I will do the things I need to do, then you need to get behind me or beside me, whatever you want to do. You need to support me, either through your time or your money. And I'm going to use that and do. Governor Little, he collected over $3 million during the 2008 for his campaign, closer to $3.5 million. And if I can even do half of that, I'll do 4 or 5 times what he did with $3.5 million. I can promise you that. And you'll start to see, and you'll start to see our campaign everywhere. It'll start to feel, and our message is going to be very clear. And so that's my long answer to your question. So right here and then right here.
So just a little bit of background on this. So my family and I were moving out here because my dad's work is requiring the vaccine. So we've kind of been forced out here. It's a good thing. It'll be just in time to vote for you.
Great.
But I'm just wondering, what exactly would you do about vaccine mandates coming from school districts, coming from the federal government, corporations, as well as things like mask mandates?
Okay. So what would I do about forced vaccination mandates coming from the government, and so forth? So again, I'm going to refer back to the federal funds, because our state signed memorandums of understanding, and our health districts and our school boards and our hospitals, they all received this massive amount of COVID relief funds, and all of them came with strings. And most of them came a while ago, like at the beginning, first, second quarter of 2020 is when they were receiving these funds and signing these agreements. This was when masks were still like coming into play. And they agreed that they would, require masks. And then down lower, you start to see where they would require vaccinations and so forth. Okay? So they signed it, not several of them, maybe even not even knowing what was coming, but they have to comply. So again, there's that problem with stopping the flow from the federal government with funds and contracts coming and putting us into what our founder said, undue obedience. Now, what I will do as governor is I will take what money is left, I'll send it back to the federal government, I'll package the little contracts back up with a little bow and send it back to them and nullify those contracts as long as I can. I'll have a legal battle. But when it comes to any public funding, then the governor, the legislature has a say of what happens to those funds. And I will use the state's resources to make sure that mandates are not implemented in the state. Now, when it comes to a private business owner who doesn't receive public funds, well, he has a right to create his own mandates. And people somehow have trouble with, in some cases, have trouble with me saying this, but they have a right to mandate. But there's something that we have always seen in history when working conditions were not good. What was the solution when there was working in conditions that weren't good? What happened? Yeah, the people united. We see it all over. We see it in the coal mines. We see it in the iron mines. We see the iron workers where it was hard work, and then they were kind of driven like slaves. And the employees would finally unite together and say, look, we're not going to do this anymore unless we get better conditions. And that's always been the solution to get better working conditions. And why? Ultimately, that's the definition of socialism, right? Control of the means of production. So that's what I would do within my power as governor when it comes to funding those who are receiving state funds, those who are receiving federal funds. I would try to block that. And then our private employers, need to, and employees need to work that out with their employers. Now, there is one other piece to this, and I'll give you an example. There's a young man in Emmett, that's where I'm from. I live in Emmett, and he took the vaccination, the COVID vaccination, if you want to call it that, and within a day or two, he was paralyzed from the neck down. And he was taken to, I don't know what his condition is right now, last time I checked. And this is a healthy young man. He's been healthy his entire life. I think he's 25 years old. And now he is paralyzed from the neck down. And he was put in either St. Al's or St. Luke's. I need to get the details, but one of the bigger hospitals. And it was right before they began to really push their employees to get the vaccination. So how can they, in any, with any sense of judgment, force a vaccination upon their employees when they have patients in their hospital that have had extreme adverse reactions to the very vaccine that they're pushing on their employees? Now, the point I'm getting at is whenever there's been an employer or anybody else that has coerced somebody into doing something that is harmful, right, especially for money, the state has always, the duty of the state is to always step in and say, look, you knew that you were going to possibly cause this harm, this damage, and therefore you're legally liable for this. And so I think in some cases where the employer knew and knows very clearly that there is a possibility of extreme adverse reaction, that there is for the state to step in and actually prosecute. And I'm not all about that. I mean, I've been under the prosecution's, political light before, and it's not any fun. So for me to say that it is something that I truly believe that. But if you have, how can you look at it otherwise? You have a hospital that has patients that have been adversely affected because of a shot, and then you're going to require that same shot upon your employees. So all right, next question. Right here.
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback off the young lady right there. You talked about the other candidates and splitting the vote, and I've asked all the candidates with the exception of the rhino that is little, never trust a little. I've asked them this question. If the polls do not swing in your favor and by the time it's time to choose a primary candidate, will you drop out in favor of another conservative candidate?
So I've been asked that question before, and one is I don't intend on losing. So I don't intend on on losing. I don't have that spirit about me, right? And I entered the race again because some people have said it this way. Well, is it about getting little out, or is it about something else? And to me, it's about a little bit of both, right? But what good do we do if we get little out and then we just replace him with somebody who's not going to do anything really more for us? What good is it? Now the reality is strategically, you have to have enough votes to beat Little, and he has a base. He has his rhino base, and we believe that we can actually get into that base, and we need about 10%, 5 to 10% of his base. We need to get probably close to 40 plus % of Janice McGeehan's base, which we are already doing that. We're already digging heavy into her base. And then there's also something going on with our campaign that we knew would happen, but it's starting to really show, and that is there's going to be a tremendous amount of people that are going to come out of the woodwork to vote for me. And they're going to come over and be Republicans where they were upset with the Republican Party before. They're going to come over and register as a Republican. We have 307, boy, I can't even say it. 307,000 unaffiliated voters in Idaho. Those are voters that don't want to be Democrats, or at least identified as Democrats. They don't want to be identified as Republicans, and they might have all kinds of reasons. They're kind of more of the libertarian type of people. And we believe if we can do this right, that we can draw a whole bunch of them over to vote for us. And Governor Little won the primaries in 2018 with 73,000 people. 73,000 people, that's all he got in the primaries. Raul Labrador was like, I think he was at 68 or something like that, thousand. I mean, we're not talking about millions and millions. We have to convince these people, and it's well within our grasp and our ability to do this. And with our tools that we're building and the things that we're doing, we believe we can get it done. We can believe we just flat out beat the other people to the race. And that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. Right here. Great question. So the question was, is there something that I can do or we can do to prevent voter fraud? And so just so you know, I talked to the Secretary of State and he says everything's okay. Okay? So we don't have to worry about that. So you'll see candidates talk about this because this is a question that a lot of people have, and you'll see some that want to go audit, and they want to put a task force together and they want to do that. And what I am planning on doing, not planning, what we are doing, is we're putting together teams, and we're going in 3 different directions. Or we're having 3 teams go in the same direction, however you want to look at it. We are asking volunteers to go and to be volunteer for the counties to work at the voting booths. Some counties need them, some counties don't, but to go actually be a volunteer and get on work for the county or volunteer for the county to work at the polls. Second, we're putting teams together that will actually be and monitor the polls. This will be inside, outside. We will have people at each polling booth, each polling area. Third, we're working on, again, I'm a software guy. I've built now 3 different softwares. And so we are integrating it with our campaign software, where anybody who is a volunteer, which will be either with the county or a volunteer there watching the polls, they will be able to have a reporting system where immediately they can report things that are questionable. They will be able to video, they'll be able to take pictures, they'll be able to give an explanation, and they'll be able to submit that to the campaign. And we will have, during the actual election, we will have people on, attorneys on our staff, we will have other individuals, and we'll have established a direct line to the Secretary of State. And so those complaints will immediately, we are not going to wait a month, a week, a month, 2 months, a year down the road to try to solve this problem. We are going to, if there is an issue, we are going to report it, and we're going to propose resolution to the issues at the time. For example, in Caldwell, according to a poll worker there was individuals that were using similar names from all the same address, and I guess there was like 10 of them that came through there.
30.
30. She said 30. There was a whole bunch of them. And, well, that would be something that needs to be reported right then, where it happened, who's reporting it, and so it can be addressed right then. And we're going to create this army so that we can keep an eye on it. Now, also, additional to that, as part of our software team, we have the ability to actually look at code and to see if it was altered or if it was corrupted in any way. And we will be able to do that. We will be able to look at the certification of the machines and actually understand it. We will be able to look at the certification of the jump drives and the things that they are using to transfer information, and that's how they do it in the state of Idaho. We will be able to count the paper ballots if we need to, because we'll have that team in place already. And so we are looking for the future of the May 2020 primary elections and 2022, and also, good thing 2020 is over, and also in November. And so that is our plan, and that's what we're doing right now. Right here.
Real quick, I just have to say that the College Republicans meeting is officially over, but we're welcome to continue here and continue asking questions and stuff. The one thing I did want to say is that I'll be posting information about the internship inside of our group if anyone wants to apply, but meeting's officially over. Welcome to stay and ask questions, anything like that.
Okay, so we can all go home, or if you want to ask any more questions, you can ask questions. So it's up to you. Just raise a hand, or you can get up and walk away. Either way. Any others? Right here.
I have several, but I'll ask this one first. Clarify what you mean by opening government land for personal use.
Say that
On
again.
your website, you show that one of the things you're in favor of is opening up more of the government owned land.
Okay,
for
land,
personal
yeah.
use.
Okay, yeah, so one of the things that I am proposing is that we, here in Idaho, take back our lands. The federal government is controlling 63% of our lands here in Idaho and 72% of our subsurface mineral rights. And it's the reason why we have an affordable housing crisis. It's the reason why rent is so high. It's a reason why our agricultural land, what's the number one industry in Idaho? It's agricultural. It still is, still the number one industry, but we're losing our land to housing development. Why are we building on our agricultural land that's been prepared and cultured and irrigated for agriculture, and now we're building houses on it? Why are we doing that? What's the reason?
There's not enough land.
There's not enough land, and the federal government has stopped us and blocked us from building and spreading our cities out. So therefore we're building on our agricultural land, or we're building up and we're going to become dense populated cities, and that's what is happening. So that's the effect. And so I plan on fighting that fight, and that's what my family has fought for generations. It is in getting the land and the natural resources into the hands of the people of Idaho and the state of Idaho. Now, I always get the question, well, what about our hunting, hiking, fishing, and all of that? We don't want to lose that. And I want to just ease your concern about that, because we're talking about, just in Idaho, 32 million acres. 32 million acres is being controlled by the federal government. So there's plenty land to have our hunting, fishing, hiking, and preserve that land for what we call multiple use, and then also have land to expand out around our cities, around our towns, even develop other agricultural places. There's plenty of land to do that. And it's actually detrimental to Idaho if we don't do that. We almost have to. If we're going to keep Idaho, Idaho, we have to take back our land. We can't even pay our own bills, because these lands and resources are being taken from, are controlled by the federal government. Our children are not going to have any type of future without having a home, without having land. And also, we will destroy our number one industry in Idaho, because we'll keep building on our agricultural land. Just give you a figure on that. I need to get the current ones, but there's a figure between 2002 and 2016, is that correct?
Like that.
And during 2002 and 2016, so we know we've done a lot more since then, 68,000 acres has been transferred from agriculture to residential subdivisions. And so that gives you an idea. Now imagine what's happened since 2016 to now. I can't imagine how many acres have been transferred. Agriculture acres have been transferred into housing.
Yeah.
Housing's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
But why are we not using the hills, these beautiful hills? Imagine building houses up in there, and there's plenty good land rather than building on our agricultural land. Did that answer your question?
It does. My response to that, and I hate saying it because I come from a farming family. A lot of the kids of farmers don't want to do that, so the parents, in order to retire, are selling the land to the developers,
Well, and
that sucks.
it does. How agriculture is a hard business to be in, but it also, when you've got a price tag of millions and millions of dollars that can be just transferred because you sell it to a developer, it's very enticing. And what I'm proposing is that if we put more supply into housing, then land in general will drop, which is, kind of, for some is scary, but land will drop and housing will become more affordable because it is a supply and demand issue. And 63% of our land is being controlled by the federal government. Any other questions? Right back here.
How do you feel about protecting the environment, and do you think humans contribute to global warming?
So the question was, how do I feel about protecting the environment, and do humans contribute to global warming? So I come from, again, a ranching background, and I watched how my father, by using the land and using the resources, benefited the environment more than any other restrictive measure that come from the federal government or from the state or whatever. And I also look at the forests, I look at these lands, and I say, well, why are the forests and our land burning up every year? Well, imagine what happens if you don't mow the grass around your house, right? The grass just keeps growing up, and it gets dry, and it gets perfect for fire, right? So what do? We mow the grass, right? Well, how do we mow the grass for millions of acres?
Logging.
You log it,
Service.
you graze it.
Thank you.
In fact, there's a bumper sticker that says, log it, graze it, or watch it burn.
That's crazy. It makes sense.
I know, amazing, right? That you actually harvest the forest, and then it's good for the forest. You harvest the forest, and then all the wildlife don't burn up. You actually graze the grass around this beautiful state, and it doesn't burn up. And historically, we've never had fires like we have now. Yet the connection is to us not using the forests. So yeah, I believe that humans are causing or contributing to global warming, but it's not the humans that we think. It's not the humans that we're told. It's those restricting the use of the land and the resources. They're the ones that are causing the fires and the smoke and the terrible air conditions and this air quality conditions. That's who's causing it. And the answer is use. Use the land. Use it. Take care of it. Benefit from it. Yes.
So is there a point where it's like too much use of the land?
Yeah. So the question was, is there a point where there's too much use of the land? There is, but I will answer it this way. Who is better to determine that? Like my father, he would not want to overgraze an area. Why? Because it would damage the land. So he's going to run his cattle, then he's going to move them. And he's going to allow the grass and the things to grow back up. And so, again, the answer is use. And those that are benefiting from the land are the ones that are going to manage it the best. They're the ones that they always have done that. And so that's my answer, clear, right here.
Yeah, so I wanted to get a picture for like our social media with all the students before everybody starts heading out.
Okay, so why don't we wrap this up? I want to thank you for your time and ask you for your support. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. and let it.
All right, everybody that's a student, come over here.
Let's do right here.
Yeah.
That's theirs. That's not mine.
Oh, yeah, I did that with. Oh, awesome. Yeah.